the district to share an opportunity for the district to share information with the jurisdictions, and as primary positions in your jurisdiction, to have you be able to go back and share the information with your planning, building staff primarily. Occasionally we have other topics of discussion, but for the most part, our topics revolve around development of one sort or another. And at our last meeting, Kim Cole was elected chair of the committee. And so I have just decided she can continue being the chair of the committee if she's willing to do so. And so Kim, I'm going to turn things over to you to begin the meeting, and then I'll be giving presentations as we go.
Great, I'll be happy to do that. Good to see everybody here. And it looks like we have a lot of new faces. So maybe we can start out with a roll call.
Yes, committee member Lapierre. Absent. Committee member Lundquist.
Here.
Committee member Barber. Committee member Norgard.
Here.
Committee member Hunter.
Here.
Committee member Cole.
Here.
Committee member Gerton.
Here.
Committee member Waffle. We have a quorum of the committee.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public. The public may comment on any item within the jurisdiction of the district. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And Joel, could you see if we have anybody that's interested in providing public comment?
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. And Kim, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the committee.
And Joelle, I see Marnie is
Marnie, yes.
needing to come over.
Okay. And she's been moved over.
This is all I do as general manager on Zoom meetings, is just monitor who's on the attendees list and shout out names. I don't pay attention to anything, just.
Hi, Marnie.
Marnie, has she been able to join us?
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, great.
Sorry, I'm late.
No problem. Good to have you with us. The next item, action items, is approval of the minutes from July 2nd, 2020 and September 13th, 2017. I did have a question. Do I need to abstain from the minutes from September 30, 2017, since I was not in attendance, or?
No, you do not.
Okay,
Everybody can approve the minutes,
great. Okay.
whether you were at the meeting or not.
And so we'll go ahead and take public comment or any board member comments on the minutes.
And Kim, I do not see anybody with their hands raised on the attendee side.
Okay. Do any board members have any comments? And if not, I will accept a motion in a second to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
So that was a motion by Hunter and seconded by Lundquist. And I'll take it out for a roll call vote. Committee member Waffle.
Yes.
Committee member Gerton.
Aye.
Committee member Cole.
Yes.
Committee member Hunter.
Yes.
Committee member Norgard.
Yes.
Committee member Barber.
Abstain.
Abstain. Committee member Lundquist. Committee member. Okay. Committee member Lapierre. Absent. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to our discussion items. And the first was an update on the district's water for housing initiative. And I saw there was no written report. I think it's an oral report only.
Yes, it's just an oral report. before I do, welcome to Trevin Barber, the city of Seaside, and also John Gert. How do you pronounce your last name, John?
Gerton.
Gerton, at the city of Delray Oaks. It's good to see some new blood. So Water for Housing in November and early December, I met at length, and Kim may have more to add to this, but in kind of parallel efforts, the Monterey City Manager has made contact with the State Water Board, as well as Housing and Community Development in Sacramento, as have we, the Water District, through Kate Daniels and Senator John Laird. In November, we were advised by an attorney for the State Water Board to request a workshop with the full Water Board to kind of express our thoughts on what we were really asking, try to clarify some of the confusion, if you will. Before we moved on that, we met again with a housing, an ad hoc housing committee consisting of Delray Oaks' mayor, city council member from Seaside, city council member from Monterey, as well as with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, to re-encourage them to contact housing advocates and the Housing and Community Development Department up at Sacramento, because the hoped for outcome was going to be that these two co-equal state agencies would have conversations at a similar level across paths. And that hadn't happened as of December. As of mid-February, when I last spoke to Kate on, I guess it was the 15th, there was some indication that, well, so we ghost wrote a letter for the senator, which in effect said, hey, look, we're not asking for more water from the river. The community intends to live within its means of the diversion limits off the river, that the legal right off the river kicked into place on January 1, 2022, and all of that water is spoken for in the current demand. So by mathematics and logic, any incremental water needed for a housing project isn't going to come from the river if we stay within the effective diversion limit. And some of the feedback was, well, you know, we're your paternalistic government. We're not sure that you can live within your means. We're still skeptical. Nevertheless, I don't believe that the senator actually sent the letter. Instead, he went ahead and had a conversation, as I understand it, with Joaquin Esquivel, the chairman of the State Water Board, who actually kind of pushed back and said, no, I don't think a workshop's a great idea. And it was just kind of left in limbo. So as of February 15th, there was no clear path forward in working with the two state agencies. I know that efforts have continued with Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, contacts at the Housing and Community Development. Kim, I don't know if Hans has circled back around with anybody. Maybe you can tell us what you know from your perspective. But I've last left it in the hands of Senator Laird's office as of mid-February.
Great. Any other comments or parts of the presentation? Looks like that's it. Do any of the board members have questions for Dave?
I have a question. Sorry, I'm just coming in new to this, obviously. But what was can you just give me a little more details about what the workshop was supposed to be about?
Yeah, so we had filed a formal application in March of last year, 2021, to the State Water Board, in effect asking for selective enforcement of Condition 2 of the cease and desist order. Condition 2 is the portion of the CDO, cease and desist order, which says no new service connections and no increase in use at an existing service connection due to a change in zoning or a change in use. Well, change in zoning is pretty self-evident. You know, Garden Road in Monterey was a change in zoning so they could do housing. The American Tin Cannery project in Pacific Grove was a change in zoning through voter initiative. But a change in use is interesting because we've struggled for about 7 years in trying to get the State Water Board to see it our way. So for the district, everything's a change in use, or at least could be a change in use. So when you go from a commercial, mattress store to a full service restaurant, we view that as a change in use. The State Water Board in 2012 didn't realize the impact of its words. And so we asked for clarification, and it went on for years actually, where we didn't get much clarification on what a change in use was. And then finally, the State Water Board said, well, we're going to make it easy for ourselves. And our rule of thumb will be if a property was residential and remains residential, no change in use, and we don't have to look any further. And if a property was commercial and remains commercial, no change in use, look no further. Now, of course, the problem with that is, as I said, if you went from a mattress store to a full service restaurant, we're actually concerned about that increase in use on that property. And that's why we have the water permit process, and you have to demonstrate where the post-project water increment is coming from. Under the state's kind of rule of thumb, mixed-use projects would demand greater scrutiny, or a rezoning from commercial to residential would demand greater scrutiny. And we said, hey, look, we've got projects that are ready to go. They're not really going to require very much water. There's excess water in the river or in the entire system. Look the other way on up to 75 acre feet for affordable housing, and don't enforce this increase in use, and do so under the health and safety escape hatch that the deputy director of the State Water Board has. So we made a formal ask to do so. Cal-Am sent a letter, and so did the Sierra Club shortly thereafter. So, a few months into last year, saying, oh, we disagree with this. We're too close to our limits. This could plummet the community into violating the State Water Board cease and desist order or the adjudication of the Seaside Basin. And we said, well, that's not really the case. And they were confused, suggesting that we were asking the State Water Board to increase the water right that could be taken from the Carmel River, which is not the case at all. And the practical issue here is any project that gets started today is very unlikely to finish within 2 years. You need to entitle it, and then you need to bid it and build it and so forth. But what was happening is the threat of enforcement made it such that developers are unwilling to either put the money up or put the design up that's only based on the district's rules that could still be enforced after the fact under the state's CDO. This, again, the difference between how we permit things and how the state views what an increase in use is. So at the end of the day, we were just asking for selective enforcement or non-enforcement and no new water. But I think there was some confusion at the state as to what we were doing. So the idea of the workshop was simply to come in and clarify exactly what the ask is and what the potential impact is and what the practical limitations were. And the reason to do it in a workshop setting is you can then reach out to every State Water Board member, because meeting with them independently or calling them independently actually violates ex parte communication rules because of the open application that we submitted in March a year ago. So the idea was to use a workshop setting as a way to just reach out to every board member instead of being accused of ex parte communication. As I said, I think the senator went ahead and had a conversation with Joaquin, Esquivel, the chair of the board, because Joaquin used to work for John Laird when John Laird was Resources Secretary under Jerry Brown's administration. So, you know, they have a collegial relationship, but it still constitutes ex parte communication. So I'm unclear on exactly what happened there, but Kate Daniels, who is John Laird's local rep, did indicate that some conversation had been had, and the message back to them was, maybe let's not do a workshop. And then it's kind of sitting out there at this point. There has been outreach to HCD folks, Housing and Community Development folks, to try to get them a little more motivated to talk to their counterparts at the State Water Board. And I have seen some back and forth with Ashley Gower at Monterey Bay Economic Partnership and Kate Daniels and some others, sharing names and contacts and so forth. And I know that Hans did have communication with HCD folks. It's probably been 2 months now, I think, but and they thought he was going to complain about the RENA numbers, and in fact that wasn't his topic, du jour. And in fact, it was much more about trying to free up this threat of enforcement so that some housing projects could get started. So that was probably more than a summary than you asked for, Vibeke, but that's kind of the storyline.
Super helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I'll go ahead and add a little bit to that since Dave requested that. So after the regional housing needs allocation process through the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments came to conclusion, the city of Monterey was given a housing allocation of 3,654 housing units that are supposed to be constructed between 2023 and 2031. As you're well aware, under the current cease and desist order, we can't set new water meters. And even the ability to change certain uses is in question. The city of Monterey would like flexibility on that. So Hans did contact the Housing and Community Development Department for the state of California. And we didn't complain about our numbers, but we said we need help getting to the next step. We need some flexibility in order to move that forward. I think the conversation went very well. They were open to listening, which was exciting from a local government level. The city of Monterey will be taking its next step probably in March, where we will be asking our council to send letters to various agencies. The city of Monterey intends to build the 3,654 units if we obtain water. How that's going to happen between 2023 and 2031 seems somewhat insurmountable right now, but considering that's what the Housing and Community Development Department through the RENA process we're supposed to build, we're going to pursue the water to build that. And just to be, I've done some preliminary calculations for those units, depending if we went with all studios versus including maybe a few 2-bedrooms in that. We'll need between 367 acre feet and about 400 acre feet of water just in the city of Monterey to construct the required housing through the RENA process and meet our obligations under HCD. So I think the city of Monterey staff would be very interested in continuing to push this issue with the State Water Resources Control Board, because we don't know how we're going to meet the state requirements otherwise. So I would love to see a workshop with the State Water Resources Control Board. If that's not a possibility, I would like to encourage the water district to pursue whatever they can to help us so we can meet our mandates.
And one last addition to this topic, and then we can move on, is the RENA numbers present a unique problem for us, because all of the planning for water supply has been based kind of through the 5th cycle of the RENA numbers, and the 6th cycle with these enormous numbers kind of changed the flavor of how much water is really needed in this 8-year period. We're very skeptical we've seen past practice, and it's not just here on the peninsula, but kind of up and down California. Good luck Monterey in building all those units in that period of time, but we don't think it's really going to happen on that pace yet. And I've been approached by Tyler Williamson of Monterey City Council and a few other folks to actually do the water calculation for the RENA numbers for the entire peninsula, which we have agreed that we will do. But it's going to produce a false result. It's going to say we need much more water faster than we're ever going to get there. And I know, your building departments can't process that many units that quickly. There's not enough local builders. There's not enough local architects. So it's going to have to come from somewhere. But past history shows that it's likely unattainable. And so I don't want to get caught up in a water supply planning process for a number of housing units that aren't really going to occur, but that's kind of what we're being forced into. And it will change the conversation about the need for a desalination plant or no need for the desalination plant and when. So this RENA go round has kind of put us in a bind as to how you plan and what's real and what's not real. So that's going to be another shoe to drop. So there's kind of two things related to housing here. One is all the new RENA numbers, which I just talked about, but the second is this 30-month to 36-month stand down request that we've had with the State Water Board to not enforce Condition 2 of the cease and desist order, so that some projects can actually get done in this next 3-year period while waiting for a new water supply to come online. So it's challenging, and the State Water Board's real intent is to kick the can down the road until they see that we're actually under construction with the next increment in water supply. But yeah, those numbers, by the way, are aspirational, which is great, but from a water standpoint, they're problematic. So
Yeah,
but we'll
just
work
building on that a little bit, and my concern with the recent legislation that we see coming out of the state of California that's penalizing cities for not meeting its regional housing needs allocation. For example, SB 35 removes our ability to do design review of projects, and we'll have to have a checklist, much like accessory dwelling units. We also heard as the governor ran for office, he was looking at taking away and removing transportation funding for jurisdictions that don't meet their RENA. I think at our city, we're very concerned about, I understand they're aspirational. We sort of fell on our sword a little bit at the city of Monterey through the RENA process, saying we don't see how we can possibly build these with the current situation of the water supply. That designation was still given to the city of Monterey. And I think personally that we may need to have a new approach. And I think we do need to plan for that amount of water. And I think you'll see letters coming forth from the city of Monterey to everybody requesting that we plan for that water and build for that water so we can meet the state mandates for housing. So that's all I've got to say. Does anyone else, any other board members have any questions? And I'd also like to open it up for public comment. Seeing no questions from board members. Any public comment?
Kim, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Okay. Great, we'll go ahead and go on to the next agenda item, which is SB 9, the California Housing Opportunity and More Efficiency Home Act, and water permits for accessory dwelling units that are sub-metered.
So, yeah, thank you. So this item is obviously everybody is aware of SB 9 and how it potentially impacts the properties within their jurisdictions and the potential for subdivisions to occur. The water district requires that every user, and that's every separate entity that has like each commercial space or each residential dwelling unit, has to have a separate water meter that is maintained by the system operator. And as part of our working with the jurisdictions to permit accessory dwelling units, the district has allowed submetering to occur when these ADUs are on part of the property that can't be subdivided and sold separately from the main dwelling unit. SB 9 has the potential of creating some of these situations where you may have an ADU that could be subdivided separately from the home. And I know, each jurisdiction has its own rules about these things, and but there's definitely a possibility of this happening. And I just wanted to bring this to the jurisdiction's attention that if the district has issued water permits for a second dwelling unit on the property or third dwelling unit on a property that ends up taking advantage of SB 9 and subdividing and splitting off part of the property that has the separate unit, that the district will implement its requirement for a separate water meter, and that we will need the jurisdiction to be aware of that and to also notify us if you have properties that are subdividing. And I know for the most part, this is probably the county that's the biggest possibility of these types of things happening. But just to notify the district if you have a situation like that so that we can follow up. What we don't want is to have a house that has a separate water meter and then have another house on another property that's still using the same water meter that it had before where it was sharing. So we just want to follow through with that. And that's really all I wanted to do with this item, is just let you know that.
Thank you very much. Great timing in terms of this law coming into effect. Do any of the board members have any questions for Stephanie?
Don't have a question, more of a statement. We have prepared a GIS tool that allows us to identify what areas will have the option of implementing SB 9, and they're not as significant as we once thought, based on the urbanized areas. And then you apply the other exemptions, high fire severity zone being one in particular. But in light of all of that, we have gotten some recent interest, just a few questions of the constituents, and a couple of our board members are wondering about it. And so it may be that the county will bring forward a local ordinance. We hadn't intended to do that because the interest was low at the onset of the adoption of SB 9, but now it seems like the interest is elevating a little bit. So you all might see the county pursue for consideration a local ordinance on SB 9.
Great. Any other questions for Stephanie? I have a couple, Stephanie. The city of Monterey will also be pursuing an ordinance for SB 9. And my question is, so there's two aspects of SB 9. One is they can build a house behind an existing house, and it's clear what the water permit process is for that, and they'd have to submit plans and go through our normal building permit standpoint. So on the subdivision, if there are not water credits available for the new lot that they're creating, how does I'm trying to figure out the timing. The city of Monterey or a jurisdiction will receive an application to subdivide the property. I think what you're saying through this report is the new property would require its own water meter. Mm-hmm. Cal-Am will not set a new water meter. So how does that work with the timing of, well, I guess it feels like an almost mandatory approval of the subdivision. But if the water meter is required, do you have any idea on how the timing of that's going to work?
Yeah, I think what you're looking at is the potential of just having a vacant lot, and you're creating a new vacant lot, and that new vacant lot will be subject to the cease and desist order and the moratorium. So they can subdivide all they want to, to the extent that they're allowed to, but they would not be able, they're under the same constraints as any other vacant lot. within our jurisdictions.
Yeah, that's where I think we are as well. It's a little bit frightening thinking about people coming in and subdividing lots and just creating a bunch of subdivisions throughout the city with, anyways, where we may not have water resources to support that, but
No, and I think that's why I do want, if you do have these situations come up, please notify the district. Not only for us to kind of keep track of what's going on, but it will also help us to refine our demand numbers.
and there is a clause in SB 9 that the building official can reject something for health and safety reasons. I'm feeling that we can reject applications for new houses that don't have adequate water credits, and I'm just curious how that's. I don't think we have an answer yet about how that applies to subdivisions. Any other comments from board members or questions? And I don't see any attendees, but Joel, can you confirm if there's any public comment?
That is correct. We have no members of the public on the line.
Okay. The next item is review proposed amendment to gray water rainwater credit for toilet flushing and clothes washing.
And this item is actually kind of interesting because I'm not even sure that all the TAC members know that the district adopted a reduced fixture unit count for projects that put in gray water, rainwater reuse systems to flush toilets and wash laundry. And so this was done 2019 and 2020. Based on our knowledge that these systems are now becoming more available, where they're literally an enclosed treatment system that can be put in a garage or under the house or whatever, to treat gray water and store it and then put that back into a system for flushing toilets and doing laundry. We have actually not permitted any of these systems at this point. There has been some interest, but quite frankly, there's a lot of hoops that have to be jumped before you can complete one of these gray water projects to get the credit. But what has come up as I've been looking at these things is that I think that they're more complex than we ever anticipated, in terms of having to create a separate plumbing system within the plumbing of the house so that you can route the gray water into treatment, treat it, store it, and then reroute it back to the fixtures. And the way the water district process would be is you could not have Cal-Am plumbing or potable plumbing at the toilet or at the washer. So all of that potable plumbing would have to be removed if it's a retrofit, or if it's new construction, you wouldn't install it to begin with. And anyway, so that kind of brought up this concern that I have about how the appropriateness of this type of a system for a credit, where chances are you're trying to do a remodel, they need just a little more credit, so they're going to put in a gray water system without realizing the amount of effort and maintenance that's involved in the long run to keep the system as a permanent system. So I am recommending to our Water Demand Committee that we change our rule and eliminate a credit for gray water reuse systems in single family dwelling applications, and that rather we would continue to allow a credit for a multifamily housing project that has 6 or more units, where you literally have like a maintenance staff and you have people that can actually maintain the system. Also that it would be restricted to new construction only, so you can install a separate plumbing system for the gray water rather than having to go under an existing building and pull out plumbing. And I think that's really problematic in terms of we're relying on the jurisdiction to make sure that there's absolutely no cross connection between the potable system and the gray water system. And then, you have to go further. We've got health department approvals that have to be received, and then reporting requirements and whatnot. So anyway, just wanted to bring this to your attention again, that if I'm successful tomorrow with our water demand committee, I'm going to have just to change that credit so it would only apply to multifamily and it would only apply to new multifamily. And we'll continue to encourage gray water systems because we do give a rebate for both rainwater harvesting and gray water systems, and that's not going to change. It's just that there's this issue about all of the hard bits of putting in a gray water system for a permanent system. So any questions on that?
Why would you limit the multifamily to 6? Is that defined somewhere as 6 units being multifamily?
No, it's in our world of water, multifamily is more than 1 unit on a property. But the concept being that for the gray water systems is to actually have enough units to be able to produce enough gray water flow to meet the demand of the building over the long haul. And so, yeah, Eric, I'm just drawing a line at 6. You know, it seems I've used the number 4 and I've used the number 6 for a lot of different district permitting, you know, to draw a line. And so, yeah, there's no, if you guys think 4 would be more appropriate, I'd go 4, but I'm just saying 6 because at that point you're actually getting an apartment unit where there are multiple units and there's probably more likelihood of generating the adequate gray water and having staff on hand to actually be able to manage that type of a system.
Yeah, I was going to add that the professional management was one of the issues as well. We thought, you know, at 6 or more, you're very likely to either have a property manager or you know, a much more active management. If it's, you know, if it's like a Davy or somebody like that, then they're on the hook for actually ensuring the backflow protection. There's reporting that has to be done on backflows. It's supposed to be every year. It's been really lax because property owners haven't been doing so. So we thought with critical mass that you'll at least get, you know, higher level of management attention to a facility.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I don't know that you'll ever find consistency amongst all the jurisdictions. They're probably all going to vary slightly. So as long as that's not a problem, just was curious how that number was derived. Thanks.
I guess my question or concern is that the only development we're seeing in our jurisdiction, I mean, we're not seeing new buildings predominantly because we're only reusing existing buildings. And so because of the cease and desist order, we may be able to get a mixed use project in where there's currently offices on the upper level or an old nightclub, and we're able to put in some residential units. And the flexibility that gray water could, first of all, we'd really like to be able to encourage these projects to incorporate those features. And since we're not seeing that many applications, is my understanding, I personally would see a more flexible approach continue, or would recommend that, all the way down to potentially single family and ADUs to be able to, I mean, we're trying to get 1 housing unit in our community. And so without a water supply, it just comes up against this issue. I don't know how we're going to be able to build housing. And so I would like to see flexibility be retained. And then if we start, and I do think it can be achieved with the building departments, it is harder. I mean, like the Garden Road projects, we want to convert office buildings into residential uses, existing buildings. So they're going to gut them. If they're not proposing, but if they wanted to propose a gray water system with that, I don't know whether that would be considered new construction versus rehabilitation of an existing building.
Yeah, and Kim, I think to respond to that, yes, I can clarify that further. The concept being that in the case of a project where they're trying to put in mixed use, they're redoing the systems within that building. And I don't have any problem with that situation. I think that where the issue comes about is more, and actually an example is in Delray Oaks, where an ADU was installed without a water permit. And to try to permit that unit, the property owner is looking at doing a gray water system. But you're looking at an existing plumbing system. They're not, and in this case, I don't even know whether it's a slab or whether it's accessible plumbing underneath. But you would have to go and actually put in a separate system in an existing building that's already constructed. And that's the kind of thing that I think is a challenge. I don't have any problem with putting in gray water for like your garden road projects. I think that would be something I would encourage very much. And that's what I do want to encourage. But my concern is more the single family type dwellings where not only the difficulty of changing out a plumbing system and making a separate plumbing system, requiring backflow and having them have to go through the process of constant backflow protection, maintaining the system and being sure that that system's actually producing enough gray water to meet the needs. And if it doesn't, at that point, we'd have to go back to the jurisdiction and have them go through this process that they've tried to avoid by putting in gray water, if they're not generating enough gray water. And then the other thing, which wasn't part of my staff report, has to do with, our toilets today are designed to function with a limited flow, but they are also designed so that you have the additional water flow from other fixtures behind them to help remove that plumbing or to remove the waste out of the house and into the sewer. And when you're putting in a gray water system, you're deflecting that shower water or sink water that might have helped to push the waste out because it's being routed into the gray water system. So I think in a small system, there are potentially a lot more problems than there would be in a mixed use or which is why, again, 6 units when you get into that type of construction.
Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts?
Trevin here. Just one question, Chair. I'm just curious if there's been any more discussion with the Realtors Association or any other community and neighborhood groups on this change for the system. I'm reading the staff report. I realize if I'm reading the single family gray water credit put that's generated because it's a program that not many people have been utilizing, but I'm just curious if there's community outreach on this topic.
Well, and that's a really good question, Trevin, and nice to meet you, by the way. As far as outreach goes on this, no, there really hasn't, because like I said, we haven't had any real interest in it other than just right now, actually, I can only just say 2 projects. And the county has only issued 2 permits for gray water use within the county, and that's not on the peninsula, as far as I know. So our outreach is to you right now as the TAC to carry the information to your jurisdiction. And if you have comments, it would be something to provide to us. It'll be reviewed by the Water Demand Committee tomorrow at our meeting. So if you have comments about that, you're certainly welcome to submit comments on that. If the committee agrees with staff's recommendation, then it will come back March, I think it's 18th, for our board meeting as a consent item. And again, we'd take comments on that, and certainly we can have that item pulled and discussed further. But the bottom line really being the realistic ability of these systems to work in a situation where you have a smaller amount of gray water. And I think that's the big concern for staff in our case.
Trevin, I see your hand is still up. Did you have another question?
Just one more point, and I don't know how much value this adds, but just maybe this can, go in the hopper. If we are working with the state on trying to figure out how to get movement around the moratorium, having a gray water program on the books might help demonstrate that we as a district and as a community are doing everything we can locally. And now we're looking for the state to help also. So I don't know how much that would really, how much ammo that would really give us, but I don't know, might come up.
Yeah, and I think we're still talking about keeping that program. It just would apply to, a more intense construction project.
And Stephanie, are you looking for a vote from us, or was this just an?
No, I think this is a, let's see, I gotta look at my staff report. No, it's just a discussion item. If you had an opinion on it, you could take an opinion, or you could take a position if you want to take a position. Or not, I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Is anybody interested in taking a position on this item?
I have one, sorry, follow-up question.
Sure.
I just jump in or raise my hand only, but so sorry if I missed this. So if you haven't had any applications and actually sort of have this tested in the single unit or ADU houses, what are you basing it on that it won't work? Like what is the basis for your assumption that it will be a challenge for it to actually function in a smaller house? I mean, I understand what you're saying about the small amount of water and it has to be maintained, but I guess other examples in other jurisdictions where it's been instituted and been a problem in smaller.
No, I think the biggest thing is, I think anybody would encourage putting in a gray water system. The difference is here we're reducing our fixture unit value, and to put this type of a system in because it's theoretically going to reduce consumption. And all of the various things that you have to do to put the system in are challenging, just not only from the standpoint of the homeowner or whoever's designing the project. It's challenging from the staff perspective as far as being able to enforce and follow up with the project. And then the third issue is if it doesn't produce sufficient water, then we have to go back and say, hey, you need to now go back to your jurisdiction and get water because you've been using CalAm water instead of gray water. And it just, logically, it would make more sense to have this type of a system in a multi-unit environment rather than a single family environment. Just like I said, because you're having to put in this second plumbing system where you're taking the water out of the main system. That to me has the potential to be a problem. And no, we haven't issued these permits, so I can't speak with any authority on it. And I honestly couldn't find anything. County Health didn't have anything on it either. So, I mean, it's new technology for the most part. And it's just, I would prefer that we take baby steps with it and keep it with some of those systems in a multifamily project and see how it works. And if it works, great. And we find eventually that this is something we can do and give credit in the smaller setting, that would be one thing. But I really don't want to go the opposite way, which is to use it in a small setting, find it doesn't work, and then have to kind of back off of it.
Board Member Lundquist?
Thank you, Chair. Just something dawned on me here. When you do it, do you have samples that are done in multifamily projects? I'm just curious, are the plumbing's interconnected? So the waste coming from one unit is then recycled in a centralized area and then replumbed back to the various units?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is that seems to be concerning. You know, if one particular unit maybe doesn't feel comfortable with using the gray water system, then do they have to use the gray water system? You know, how all that works in a multifamily project. It seems very complicated when you compare it to a single family dwelling that is one owner, one occupant, and they have that ability to turn it off or turn it on depending on their particular needs.
Well, but when you're doing a permit on it, it's a permanent requirement, so you can't turn it on and off, and that's.
And that's the problem.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Stephanie? I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion, and if it dies for lack of second, it does, but at least I tried. Due to the housing crisis on the Monterey Peninsula, I recommend that the gray ordinance, or that we support gray water water systems for single family and multifamily, and especially in light of that we don't really currently have any significant applications. And we don't really have any specific examples of where it doesn't work. That would be my motion. I don't know if anyone's interested in seconding it. Okay, I don't see a second, so it dies for a lack of second. Does anyone, oh, go ahead, Trevin.
Well, I'd be happy to second it. I just don't know if this is a Brown Act meeting, if we're allowed to, because it's not agendized.
I guess I'd look to Water District staff to see if that's possible.
I believe this is framed properly. It's the topic, not the specific action that's necessary.
I'm sorry, Mr. Larry, does that mean we could take action? Or
I believe the motion would be appropriate and action is appropriate if you deem to go down that path.
Okay, Chair, I'd be happy to second your motion.
So you're difficult to understand, Trevin, but as I understand it, you're willing to second the motion?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, am I breaking up?
Just a little bit, but that's okay. Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion?
On the motion question, are we moving that? It sounded like that the district was going to be presenting this to another body. Are we moving that the other body act in some fashion, or what is the direction here that we're presenting?
My understanding is that the motion would be directing staff to pursue, investigate along the lines of the motion.
Thanks.
So in other words, don't proceed bringing this as an ordinance to the district with the 6-unit minimum at this time. I think what I'm hearing is go back and investigate keeping it at a single unit, beginning at a single residential unit, single family property to any multifamily. So we will go back and look at that.
Well, I don't think there's any going back. It just is tomorrow.
Or just not taking it forward.
Yeah, we just wouldn't take it forward.
And I guess just for my clarification, Dave and Stephanie, I mean, does our recommendation just go forward to the Water Demand Committee if the motion passed? I'm not sure I necessarily meant to stop your entire action for moving forward to your board. So if you could just explain to me what the significance of the vote would be.
Yeah.
This is Dave Laredo. Your committee is an advisory committee. You do not direct specific action, but your advice is solicited by staff and by the Water Demand Committee. So it would be reported to them as such.
That makes sense to me. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing that and none, I'll go ahead and call for the question.
Yes, Committee Member Lapierre. Absent. Committee Member Lundquist,
Aye.
Committee Member Barber,
Aye.
Committee Member Norgard,
I'm just gonna have to abstain on this one. I don't feel like I understand the issue enough. I can do so. I'm too new to this.
Committee Member Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Cole,
Aye.
Committee Member Gerton,
Aye.
Committee Member Waffle.
Yes.
The motion carries.
So it sounds like this will go to the Water Demand Committee tomorrow. And we appreciate you listening to our comments. The next item on the agenda is to review the district-wide landscape water permit requirement in compliance with the state's model water efficient landscape ordinance.
Thank you, Kim. And this item, again, this is just a reminder, and that is that the district serves as the regional permitting agency for the state's mandated water efficient landscape ordinance. At the request of the Technical Advisory Committee, we took on that role several years ago and issue landscape water permits for new and rehabilitated landscapes in compliance with our Rule 142.1, which is slightly stricter than what the state's model ordinance is. So just a reminder to all the jurisdictions to send projects to us when their new houses or demolitions and rebuilds occur, when you have 2,500 square feet of rehabilitated landscapes occurring. They do have to meet those requirements in that rule, which was part of the packet. And the water district actually issues a landscape water permit for the project, and then follows up after construction, after installation, to verify that they have met the requirements, including having an audit done and having the information left behind for the homeowner. And then annually, we report to the state the number of permits that have been issued and the number of finals that we've done. So that's just, like I said, just to remind everybody, please take it back to your jurisdictions and let your planners know, let your building department know that when they see this type of construction taking place on landscapes, to send them to us.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Board Member Hunter.
Yes, thank you, Kim. So just so I'm clear, it's 2,500 square feet of actual landscape area, not like total disturbance area for a new residence, for example.
A new residence is actually a 500 square foot.
Okay.
So they would need to, yeah, any new landscape would have to come through our office as well. And we catch most of those, Allison, when they come, you know, if they're coming through for a water permit.
Yeah.
At that point, we also collect the information, have them submit the landscape plans as part of that process.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, comments from the public? It looks like we don't have any attendees.
That is correct.
And I just wanted to thank your staff, Stephanie. They do an incredible job. It's not an easy plan check. The MAWAs and the maximum allowed water allowance drives me crazy. So thank you for having qualified staff that does that. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay. See no further comment on that. We'll go ahead and move.
Yeah, just one real quick comment. One of the issues we still battle with landscape is a lot of final inspections are done before the landscape's in. And so, and unincorporated county has bigger impact than obviously the much more congested urban environments, but it's been really difficult to police because no one actually sees final landscaping until it's all kind of flourishing. And then somebody comes back with an inquiry going, how did they do that? And a lot of times It's done after the fact, and it may even be that they originally did the approved plan and then came back in and expanded it. Or the approved plan was never reviewed because, as I said, final inspection got done before any landscape was in.
Thank you for
Dave.
reminding us. Appreciate that. Moving on to the last agenda item, that's a reminder of temporary suspension of water permit requirements for outdoor restaurant seating during pandemic.
And your final reminder of the day. So again, I'm not sure that everybody's aware of this, but the Water Management District does require a water permit for outdoor restaurant seating that exceeds 50% of the interior permitted number of seats. So during the pandemic, the district has suspended its permit requirements for outdoor dining areas. We've adopted 2 urgency ordinances, and the ordinance that's currently in place is scheduled to expire in April. Obviously, we've also seen a lot of interest in continuing outdoor dining and making it a permanent part of our cities, which is fine. But I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that there is a requirement for a water permit for outdoor dining when the seating is exceeding 50% of the interior. And so they can go ahead and put some outdoor dining and it's not an issue, but once they hit that threshold, then they really need to get a water permit. And when our ordinance expires, then I will have my inspectors out kind of keeping their eye for areas that may have increased their outdoor above the number that they should have, in which case we will be coming to the jurisdiction and asking you to enforce that for us. So Seaside, has water in an allocation. They could actually allow these extra seats to be permitted. Kim, I know you're in a position that you can't, but I just really wanted to share this with you that we did temporarily suspend our enforcement, and unless we adopt another urgency ordinance, and right now I'm not really sure what our position is going to be on continuing that. We may adopt an ordinance that takes us through the end of this year, and then see how it goes. Obviously day to day with COVID, we don't know what's going to happen next. So anyway, just a reminder.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any questions for Stephanie?
And if I may, this is Dave Laredo. Just as a reminder, as an urgency ordinance for health and safety purposes, which is what this was adopted, is that we have a streamlined CEQA process. When we no longer have the cover of an urgency ordinance for health and safety purposes, we would then, and if there was a request to continue this accounting, we would have to process it differently under CEQA, and that would be problematic to claim that it did not increase our water use. So I just want to point out the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, a big thanks to the Water District for working with all the jurisdictions during the COVID pandemic and the craziness that created for all of us for the last 2 years, where it felt like every other week we were having to work with our restaurateurs to move things outside, move people 6 feet apart, and trying to keep everybody healthy. So thank you, and please thank your board for the flexibility they did provide during that extreme situation that we were going through. As we adjourn, I guess that looks like that's the end of our agenda. I guess I just look to Dave and Stephanie if I'm missing anything, and otherwise I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you all for attending today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.